Again, my name is Megan Lau. I'm from Story Hive, and this is my colleague Lizzie Karp. She leads the brand content and experience team.
How's everybody doing? Woo! Yeah, that's my job. Woo, girl. Nice to see you all. I'm really excited to introduce you to these two brilliant women, Liz Manashil and Jess Fuselier. Yes? This is a really intimidating industry, and days like today are, part of it is breaking down the walls between creator and people who might have, perceived power or influence. But even Megan and I, we get intimidated by people. And when you read the case studies of the women behind the Sundance Creative Distribution program you'll hear more about today, we had huge crushes. And we were totally intimidated. And through a friend, we were connected, we chatted on the phone, and then we were able to meet them in person. And it's by making the effort and just reaching out to make relationships that really exciting things can happen. And you can bring up really smart people to share some things with your community. So just a hot tip. Just be brave and reach out. What else?
So yeah, when we met you, we really connected over the shared goal of supporting independent artists. And today you're here to talk about your huge area of expertise, which is data-driven, creator-led marketing and distribution. And essentially that's about breaking down the walls between the creator and the audiences. This is a really special session. And again, I can't recommend those case studies for Columbus and Unrest. And is there one more now? It's coming out soon?
It will be during the summer.
Yeah.
3 more coming out.
They're just gems. So thank you so much for those.
And I'll just give you a little bit more background of what these women do. So Liz is the manager of Sundance Institute's Creative Distribution Initiative, and she's a filmmaker working on her second feature film. We were just talking about her dog named Laura Palmer, who has an Instagram account. She's 3 years old and apparently a jerk. And Jess is the manager of research and education. She's a really experienced coder, community outreach and marketing specialist, and a former professional ballet dancer. Please give them a very warm welcome.
Okay, I'm going to talk into this. Yes.
All right, there we go.
We're talking out loud in a room full of people.
That was like the most flattering intro I think we've ever gotten before. That was so nice.
I just kept laughing. Like, that's way too nice for us. Maybe it's good enough for you, but it's really too nice for me.
Yeah.
Cool. Hi, guys. We're Liz and Jess from Sundance. Thank you for having us. Just as a disclaimer, I'm super pregnant right now, and I'm like making burp noises and like can't like sit straight. And so if it looks like I'm doing something, it's because of the baby. It's because of this parasite inside of me. Cool. Now maybe we should talk about what we're supposed to talk about.
Awesome. So we are with the Creative Distribution Initiative at Sundance. We are 2/3 of that department. We are a small 3-person department, and who's not here today is our director, Chris Horton.
He's okay.
Yeah.
He's all right.
We're the cool part.
We're trying to get more Twitter followers than him. And you'll see, because we'll put our Twitter handles up here from time to time. Please follow us. We want to beat him so badly.
So we're the in-house marketing and distribution consultants for Sundance alumni. So if you've ever had any film in the festival, or if you've gone through any of our labs, if you've had any support from us, you can call us. You can get advice on distribution and marketing free. We're not in it for the money.
If you haven't had any support from Sundance, please
you can still
email us regardless. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
We're here just to support independent creators, and our favorite thing is to support people who want to work hard and artists who want to get their work out to audiences.
Totally. We have an open door policy. So again, please email us at creativedistribution@sundance.org if you have any questions or just want to chat. So we're on the front lines of the indie film industry in terms of distribution and marketing. So what we're doing is we're analyzing what's happening, we're studying the trends in the marketplace, and then we're packaging that information and releasing insights to you all to hopefully help you find more sustainable pathways in the future as you continue making work.
We run this thing called the Creative Distribution Fellowship. We're going to talk about it a little bit later on in the presentation. But basically, we look for North American filmmakers who have digital rights for North America free and clear. So they retained the rights, they own those rights, they haven't given those to a distributor, and they want to think creatively about the distribution. They want to get involved, they want to be a part of, the trailer, the poster, they want to run the Facebook ads. They want to get to know their audience in a data-based way. And also there's some grassroots techniques that we talk about too, like email marketing, in-person events, things like that. So Sundance provides a certain amount of non-recoupable grant money for these 3 films a year. And we'll be talking about those today. And then we, as like Jess was saying, we publish that information of what we've learned to the world so that we can all learn from what these filmmakers have gone through. Well, I want to talk respectively about, I wanted to validate us a little bit, even though it's necessary because they were really, really nice. But Jess and I have both interesting backgrounds. So I'm a micro-budget feature writer-director. I'm sound locking my second feature in about 2 weeks. And I worked for a distribution consultant named Peter Broderick who focused on documentary. And the reason I bring these things up is because I come from a grassroots, DIY, crowdfunding, poor as dirt kind of filmmaking world. And then also, because of my experience working with a distribution consultant, I've had access to witness the marketing campaigns of dozens of documentaries and fiction films.
Yeah, and similarly, after I stopped dancing, I went back to school, got my degree, and found myself doing community outreach on film sets. It was a really unique opportunity. I was basically the liaison between the production and the communities and helping to facilitate conversations. I also did some work with nonprofits and got interested in web development. So I went and took a boot camp for about 10 weeks and learned how to code, and then started working in the tech industry. I really felt like it was important for me to kind of hone those chops and have those skills. So I worked at a digital agency and then went to a startup of 5 where I was pulling 14-hour days and just living that life. I quickly realized that I miss human interaction and I missed interacting with artists specifically. So I married those 2 things together and found myself in the position that I'm in today. So I'm the data nerd of the group. I crunch the numbers. I look at the insights that are going on. I try to figure out why things are happening. And I'm also the one who writes the case studies as well, which felt like I was in college again when I wrote them. So that's kind of it in a nutshell in terms of us.
So let's state some things that we all kind of know out loud. The market's oversaturated. We all know this. The democratization of production and distribution film has been a blessing and a curse for all of us. It's really hard to break. I cannot talk, and I want to blame the parasite, but it's not the parasite. We want to break through. We want to get noticed as artists, but we're surrounded by so much more content than ever before. So what we want to do is flip the script a little bit. It's not a burden. It's not a burden, and it's not something that we should be complaining about so much, about how hard it is to break through. It's an opportunity. We get to talk to a lot of filmmakers, and no one really wants to get involved in marketing and distribution at all. So this is an opportunity for you. This is exciting because if you do get involved, as we'll talk about, you have a higher chance of success. You have a better chance to make more revenue for your film. You have a better chance to leverage a higher profile for your next project. And this all comes from you not letting a distributor just take all rights away from your film and throw it out into the universe. It's about you doing a customized release for your projects.
Yeah, and when we say opportunity, we're really focused on growing your audience because that's going to be your biggest commodity as a filmmaker. Knowing and growing your audience, it's a cash cow when you really think about it. Because regardless of whether or not you're working with gatekeepers, if you have an invested audience, if you have the proof that you actually have eyeballs that want to see your work, then it just makes things a lot easier. We know you're exhausted after you get done making your film. we totally understand. I've seen that just from the filmmakers that I know, obviously working with Liz, being a filmmaker herself. We get it, but you have to think of this as a marathon, not a sprint, okay? By the time you're done with that film, you have to be ready to get it out into the marketplace. And we're no longer in those days anymore where filmmakers can just shut themselves off from that process and hand it over and think that it's actually going to get in front of the people that you intend it to get in front of. So you have to be invested. And there's different ways to do that. And it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. It's different for every filmmaker. But just really start to think about it in the beginning stages of making your film, okay? When you start to think about distribution and marketing early on, it makes it a lot easier down the line because you already have notions of how you think you're going to get this film out into the world.
And also remember, like Jess was saying, traditionally we've been cut out of these conversations. So rather than seeing it as a burden, it's an opportunity because now as we learn more about marketing and distribution, we could have more of a voice in the conversation. I mean, I remember doing the distribution contract for my first film and not even knowing what I was allowed to negotiate with a distributor. There's a lot of leeway that no one talks about because we have confidentiality clauses and we have NDAs and all these things. So the other byproduct of these case studies is when you do self-distribution, you get to talk about the release of your film, which you don't get to do when you sign an all rights distribution deal with a traditional distributor. So.
Yeah, so, like we've been saying, the state of the industry right now, it's getting better. There are a lot of innovations that are coming onto the scene that we'll, get to a little bit later that are helping filmmakers have access to more information. But it's still a little bit behind in terms of technical innovation. A lot of times, storytellers right now have access to blunt instruments in terms of information on how their films are performing in the marketplace. So we're talking Box Office Mojo, Rotten Tomatoes, these things are some information, but again, it's not really granular. It's not really lifting the hood up and giving you that, deep analysis of what's happening with your film.
And if you can't afford a publicist, like I can't afford a publicist, you don't get those Rotten Tomatoes reviews. If you can't afford a theatrical release, you don't get to look and see how well your film is doing at Box Office Mojo. And it's really hard to get those VOD numbers. So we're saying, what are some lo-fi and hi-fi ways to get more information on your audience so that you can be really efficient with your ad spend? So, look at this plant. All right.
So this is a term we love to use in our department, and we like to stand on the mountaintops and shout it far and wide. It's called feedback loops. And it's really important to start to get comfortable with this type of process. So what we mean by a feedback loop is you're performing an action, you're monitoring the reaction, and then you're making modifications to optimize that strategy in the future. So take social media, for example. If you're running social media ads, you have access to information on how that ad is performing. And there may be reasons why, there are different reasons why that ad may not be performing well. It could be you have too much copy on your image. It could be you're not targeting the right audience. You really need to start paying attention to the details. And they're there, and they're accessible. It's just knowing where to find them and how to use them. But if you can create feedback loops throughout your entire creative process, you're going to have so much more information that you can learn from. And in the end, when you do get to that place where you're distributing and marketing your film, you have a better idea and a more detailed understanding of who that audience is and who you're trying to reach.
So briefly, we want to mention, if you guys have any questions, if we're saying anything that's like really dumb or not dumb at all, or that I don't know what are the circumstances, please raise your hand and we'll throw the mic to you. We want this to be interactive. There will be a Q&A at the end, but don't feel like you have to wait. We can jump and have a conversation throughout. My other question is, have you guys heard of Thunder Road, the film? I see some nods. Okay, so they're part of our year 2 fellowship, and I wanted to give an example of a feedback loop using Thunder Road. So Thunder Road, by the way, they are champions. I don't
pros. I mean,
so they just did this massive French theatrical run. I think they're in the midst of it right now, and I think they grossed their entire production budget back.
They've already made their money back
from French theatrical. It's insane. But that's not the feedback loop. So the feedback loop is when they were running the Kickstarter campaign to raise money for Thunder Road, they did a Facebook ad and they started targeting who they thought was their audience. And then they looked at the results, they looked at the analytics, and they saw actually men were responding far more than women were. So this minor change of just retargeting the ad to a male-dominated audience made their ad spend much more efficient, converted a lot more backers to the Kickstarter campaign. And this is just, it seems like a minor thing, but very often when you're running a digital ad, it's hard to even press boost, I think. It's hard to even have the impetus to run the ad. But if you take that extra step and look at the feedback loop and really figure out the efficient ploy there, you'll get the results that you need. And having Kickstarter backers obviously is a massive boon to any film.
And I know we're talking a lot about social media ads, and we might say some stuff that doesn't make sense. But just know that all of this information is accessible, and I'm happy to chat with you all if you're confused of like, how do I even begin to learn how to run an ad on Facebook? I know it gets really confusing. Like before I even learned how to code, all I could do was turn my computer on and type on it. Promise you. So I know there's a learning curve, but with the access to information we have today in terms of YouTube videos you can watch, you can really do it. So sync up with me if you're confused on all this, on how to just even begin.
So I'm repping the lo-fi basics because I'm the lo-fi filmmaker. And I'm just going to talk about all the free things I do to build an audience. Obviously, social media analytics, we're talking a lot about that. But Google Analytics, we are massive champions of everyone having a website. And maybe it feels like it's a little old school, but just running and seeing how people get to your website, how people are finding you, how long they stay on your website, things like that tell you a lot more about your audience than you knew before you ran those analytics. Google Analytics is free. You can, you've taught me that. You taught me about Google Analytics. When you use Vimeo or you work with an aggregator, there are ways to look at like a Vimeo dashboard and see when people drop off on your content. Are a lot of people tuning out after 20 seconds? Maybe you should look at your cut and see what happens at 20 seconds that's turning people off a little bit. I am a massive fan of MailChimp. I should get money. I talk about them so much. What I do, and maybe some of you have done, is if you have a film festival screening, you get a clipboard with a bunch of pieces of paper, you tie a piece of string to the clipboard, you write a bunch of lines on the pieces of paper, and you collect email addresses. At the end of your screening, you have 150 people who then you could add to your email list. Then you can tell them about everything you're doing in your world. You're growing your own personal audience that you can take with you from project to project. And don't underestimate the value of an email address.
Yeah. So I know, we're rooted in the digital space, especially social media, but don't forget that email it's still going to have a higher conversion than social media ads, okay? So having an email list is really important for those call to actions. When your film goes on TVOD, transactional video on demand, like iTunes, you want to blast that out to your newsletter because you're most likely going to get more hits, more people to carry out that action than you will on social media. It's more of an active participation channel rather than a passive participation.
Engage. We talk about engagement a lot, but our big thing is being authentic and being personal and emotional. So the old world of distribution was an all rights distributor coming in, taking your film, all rights, all territories for 15 to 20 years and cutting you out of the process. What we want to do is say, no, pull back the curtain, be yourself, talk about your film like a human. Don't talk about it like a self-promotional monster/robot, and be emotional. So even if you post something like, it was really hard today on set, pulling back that curtain and letting people in, it expands your network in a way that it's actually quite touching and will leave you you'll be more memorable actually to your audiences because you won't be just this one-dimensional, what's the word I'm thinking of? Soulless, barnacle.
Sure.
lots of words I could think of. And I encourage that for things like crowdfunding campaigns as well. Use enthusiasm, use emotions, use exclamation points. I mean, they're really important.
Liz loves exclamation points.
Surprise, surprise. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Scene and Spark, Patreon. Obviously, these are all platforms where you can directly connect with your audience, communicate with them, host Google Hangouts, anything you do to break down that wall between you and them, it will help grow your personal brands. And that's our whole thing, is you are the brands. And that sounds really corporate, but it's just another word for your personality, like the auteur theory of filmmaking. You're the auteur, you're the brand, you are the artist. It's all the same thing. Crowdsource theatrical, out of curiosity, who's heard of Tug or Gather in this audience? One or
Oh, wow.
Jess.
Okay.
Do you want to explain Tug?
Yeah. So Crowdsource theatrical, it's been around for a beat, for a while now. And basically what it is it's a way for you to take control of a theatrical release. So you can put it on the platform. And I know more about Tug than I do Gather. Gather operates a little bit differently. They curate their titles, whereas Tug doesn't. You can just put any piece of work on their platform. And somebody in air can say, I want to see that movie. They work with them to lock in a theater and a date and a time, and then it puts up an event page with a ticking clock. And basically, you have to hit a threshold. So many tickets have to be purchased before that event is a go. So once that threshold is met, say once 40 people buy tickets, those credit cards are charged and that event is going to happen. So basically, it takes the risk out for both sides, and you don't have to have a distributor to have a theatrical run, which is really cool. And the splits are higher for you as an artist using Crowdsource theatrical. So you're getting more on every ticket than you would if you were working with a middleman or woman who's taking a percentage of that ticket sale. So yeah, look at it, it's cool. And Tug also does educational distribution as well, which don't underestimate the power of educational distribution, because there's a lot of money in educational distribution.
You know, I'm always jealous of documentarians because it's like, I don't get that. I don't get to do educational distribution. And thing about Tug is you get all the email addresses of all the people who come to your screenings. Yet again, what a benefit. Test screenings. You don't have to hire like $1,000 I don't know how much people pay for test screenings. Probably way more than $1,000. $10,000 company to run a test, to run a focus group for your film. I've held many focus groups in my living room, which is not large, in my 700 square feet living room. I mean, I don't know, it's probably like 100 square feet. And I could send you a screening questionnaire that helps you collect data on what people like about your project, what they respond to, getting demographics, and collecting all that information as you do test screenings for your project will help you when it comes to distribution. And at the very least, here's a hack. I don't have a log line, but when you do these test screenings, you ask for a log line and you're like crowdsourcing like 30 log lines for yourself. So it's pretty fantastic.
That's awesome. Also, with test screenings, don't forget, we'll get to your question in 1 second. And with test screenings, you can do lo-fi, digital versions of that. So like you could do a Google Hangout with people and watch it all together and then talk about it afterwards. So just think outside the box. I know test screenings, sometimes people equate that to working with these companies, like Liz said, where you're paying $10,000, and you don't need to do that. It's still like lo-fi is still a great way to go. Question in the back right there.
About Tug and Gather, is it the people that is the audience for those websites people who are trying to or are looking for content to put in their theaters? And if so, do they have to be members? Like, who gets to watch the films that are on there? Is it just like a free for all? Anybody can see it?
That's a great question. So specifically speaking to Tug, just since that's the platform that I know the best, they already have those relationships with the exhibitors, with the theaters. So they're working with most major megaplexes in the country. So the AMCs, the Regal, all of the other ones. And I'm sorry, I don't know what they are in Canada, but that's what they are in the US. So, they're working with a lot of those chains. They also work with some independent theaters as well. So they already have those relationships established. So it's more on the audience side. So it's people that actually want to see this film in their community. They can reach out to Tug and say, I want to see this film. Can you help me facilitate a screening of it? So it really does take the filmmaker putting some legwork behind it. So again, thinking about that email newsletter that you have, you could say, hey guys, my film is now on Tug. If you want to see it in your area, request a screening. So it's going to take you to do a little bit of promotion to let people know that it's out there. But once you kind of catalyze that effort, you have a theatrical release and you don't need a distributor. So, yeah. And that's their website is just, I think it's just tugg.com. So, but sync up with me afterwards and give you more information.
Yeah, if we ever say anything or you want the resource, email creativedistribution@sundance.org and we'll send it to you. And it just goes to the two of us, so you can complain about Sundance if you want. You could do whatever.
Talk about your dog that's named Laura Palmer. I don't.
Oh, don't you dare! Unless there's an Agent L. Cooper dog in the audience, then I don't want to hear about it.
So now we're going to talk about some what we call HiFi companies. So this is when you have more resources at your disposal, maybe more funding, the ability to kind of put some capital into platforms that can help you get more access to information. And before we do that, you can totally go to StoryFit, that's fine. I just want to give a definition really quick. I want to give a definition of AI, because a lot of these platforms are AI driven. And I think sometimes people who, and maybe a lot of you are super tech savvy, which is awesome, and this might be a little bit rudimentary for you, and if so, I'm sorry. But sometimes we equate AI with robots, where it's these machines walking around and talking to us, and that's not, part of AI is that, but a lot of it isn't. So according to Webster, AI is a branch of computer science dealing with the simulation of intelligent behavior in computers. So AI-driven platforms are as good as the information that they're ingesting. Okay, so whenever you're going to the marketplace and you're looking at these platforms that are, coming into existence, it's important to look under the hood and see what information they're feeding these systems in order to give you this analysis. So we always ask that question when we're talking to these platforms, so what data sources are you tapping into? What are you ingesting into your system? And it's really important that they have a large amount of data to pull from, and also accurate sources, because that system is going to be learning from it, and developing those insights for you from that. So the first one we're going to break down is StoryFit. This is a really cool company. Oh, and by the way, these aren't, I have to say this, these aren't official partners of Sundance. These are just really cool companies that we've had the pleasure of getting to know and geeking out with.
In fact, we might get in trouble at some point for promoting this company the way that we do. But it'll even out with MailChimp.
Fine. It's fine. Yeah. So StoryFit, it's a script analysis platform. It's also a women-led company, which we love. Being in the tech space, you don't see much of that. Basically what it is, it's going to give you a visual representation of your script. So it's going to be breaking down character dimensions, plot points, emotional tonality, and it's making sure you have dynamic areas, or it's telling you if certain parts of your script fall flat. It's really cool. It also does gender parity, so it shows you is there a balance between your male and female characters? Yeah. StoryFit is interesting because they started in the publishing game. So they also have a lot of that information in their system, which we like. We think from what we've seen, it seems pretty accurate. They've been into our offices a few times. And like I said, we don't work with these companies. We're not paying them money. So we don't have the money to pay them. So it's just about learning what we think would be helpful to filmmakers. But yes, it seems pretty accurate. We're still constantly checking in with them to see the improvements that they're making on their platform. And they're continually making improvements. So they did a breakdown of the Breakfast Club for us.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, go
this
for
is my
it.
one thing I can say about this because I can't talk about a lot of this stuff. Yes, that's what sold me. They said they tried to figure out what the most emotionally dynamic film that they could have access to was, and it was The Breakfast Club. And they graphed out the complexity of all the characters, which, I mean, I just watch it for the kiss between Judd Nelson and Molly Ringwald, but like other people watch it for rich emotional dynamics. Right. And that was exciting to me.
This could even be used in the casting phase. So a casting director could use this to be able to do those breakdowns of the character and give the actor a little more information to go off of rather than, just like a 2-sentence synopsis. So.
And that was something that I was surprised by because I cast my own projects because surprise, surprise, I can't afford a casting director. And agencies would ask me for a breakdown. I'd be like, sure, I have that. And then I'd Google what a breakdown was and I'd write something up. And I didn't realize that it got sent out into the ether and like multiple agencies were all sending my really paltry attempt at like defining my characters to the world. So if I had something that like could break down in really evocative terminology how cool my characters were, you'd get access to a much better set of talent, I think.
So Cordo is not on the market yet, but we think it's a really cool company, and it'll be really great when it is on the market. Part of the team is led by Bergquist, who's a data scientist out of USC. He runs the Entertainment Technology Center, and if you haven't looked into that, I highly recommend it. So USC Entertainment Technology Center, basically all of the studio systems tap into that and they feed their data through there and they're just running analysis on studio system data. So it's pretty fascinating. So he does a lot of work in this space and is super knowledgeable. But this is an AI knowledge engine for media and entertainment. So basically what you can do with this system is you can analyze certain artistic traits. So you can do narrative structure, scene construction, character development. And what it does is it takes those elements and it checks how it's resonating with audiences. So it's doing sentiment mapping across social media to see what conversations are happening around those very specific elements, which is super cool. It's basically, not only is it giving you like positive, negative, it's going really deep in terms of the sentiment that's being discussed around that certain section. So, you can also use this in the development phase and use it as a research tool. So you can look up past works in this platform. So you can put a film in and see how they broke their story down and how they constructed certain scenes and how that was received with an audience through social media. They have access with a lot of companies like the Facebooks, like the Googles, Fang, and they're tapping into that information. So it's really interesting. They have a lot of information to pull from, you can look at how another director has decided how to construct a successful scene or maybe a not so successful scene, and how do you want to do it differently? How do you want to construct something that could maybe resonate with an audience better? Great question. I don't know. I will let you know. You'll see our link for our newsletter in the end. And
Please
definitely
sign up for our
up.
newsletter on MailChimp.
Because we, do you like that plug? Did you like that shameless plug? No, we talk about this stuff all the time. So we'll definitely let you know. Yeah. Synalytic. I know Liz loves this one. Basically, this is going to help you in the packaging phase for your film. It helps you make better business decisions as a filmmaker. So what it's doing is it's analyzing the financial risk of all of the decisions that go into filmmaking, and giving you projections where you can talk the talk and walk the walk with investors. And
we have to take a segue from this because projections is like the number one thing we get asked about. And I just want to say, if an investor asks you for a projection, it doesn't exist. This is not something that exists or is a trustworthy concept until AI gets involved. because the market is broken, because distribution is really confusing right now. And I want to say it's fucked, but I did it. It's fucked. It's like a big wild, wild west right now. And has anyone ever been broached to ask for a projection before? Has anyone said like, what's a projection for your film? And if you give me a projection, I may get involved. Is this normal for you? I saw one head nodded. That was it. That was just depressing. Yeah. So it's the number one email we get, I would say, is someone saying, can you give us resources for projections for indie feature content? And this is what's so exciting about Synalytic is that you can actually pay like a monthly fee and have access to those projections to help connive ignorant investors into jumping on board your project.
And this platform is created by indie producers, which is really cool because they totally understand like not having that much money to work with. So they're not going to lock you. They have an entry level product and then they have a more robust product for, the distributors out there. But their entry level product, they're totally open to doing like a month to month plan and you can cancel it whenever you want to. So say you just need it for a month, you can totally do that and be like, hey, that's all I have the money for. But they also do, they also do like a talent assessment. They also do piracy projections as well. So you can look at how similar films have been pirated in different areas, which is really cool.
And Synalytic's about to launch publicly.
They are. Yeah, they've been hitting all of the big festivals and doing a lot of promotion. So stay tuned. They will be launching very soon.
And just to jump on, because I know you're going to talk about something that I know nothing about in the next slide. It's very cool about the social media analytic profile of your actors. You could put in any actor, and then you can get essentially a mathematical equation that tells you their influence in the world based off of Twitter, based off Facebook, based off of just their impact on these platforms, which again is a massive part of a digital marketing campaign. At the end of the day, that's why influencers get cast, right? So if you want to investigate whether your talent has that kind of impact or profile online, you can use something like Synalytic.
So Parsley, they're really interesting. We connected with them during South by this past year. They're not a film-specific platform, but we think their platform has a lot of, it could be used specifically for film instances. So it's a suite of tools that helps you analyze how people are connecting with the content that you're putting out there. And the interesting thing about it is, as much as we hate it, press is still a big part of a successful release, especially if you're having a theatrical. Those reviews, getting that press is really important. So what they do is they're analyzing the earned media analytics on a more granular level. So a lot of times when you're looking at earned media analytics, they're basically giving you the average monthly viewership, which means the total amount of people that are hitting that news or press outlet on a monthly basis. That does not mean that all of those people's eyeballs are hitting that one press hit that you were in. So they're actually able to drill down on the specific number of people that have seen that press hit, which is really interesting. We'll see what happens with this platform in terms of how accessible it becomes. Right now, that's not as accessible as we'd like it to be. But the one thing that they do have right now, which is in beta, which could be really cool if they do decide to launch an entry-level version of this, is called Currents. So it's their Currents platform. What you can do is you can go in and you can search a very specific topic, and then it'll show you kind of the traction that it has, the conversations that are happening around it, the press that has surrounded it. So it could help you in your marketing campaign to say, like, what angle do I want to take with my film? What topics do I have in my film, and which ones should I focus on? Which ones will have the most traction with viewers? So Powster and Usher U, which is the next slide, They're great. There are geolocation-based ticketing platforms, really sleek user interfaces. Basically, they're tapped into all of the theaters that you're working with on your theatrical campaign. So when somebody goes to your ticketing page, it automatically pops up showtimes in their area. It makes it really easy for them to click through. It's just like 3 clicks and they can buy their tickets. I don't know if you've gone to a lot of websites where filmmakers are just putting links on there and then it gives you the theater's website, but it doesn't take you to the specific screening page, and then you have to spend 20 minutes to find it, and it's so laborious. So this cuts out a lot of that, and it just makes it like really user-friendly. And on the back end, there's an analytics dashboard. So basically, they're showing you referrals, where people are coming from, how many people are clicking on those links, your most popular locations, like where people are buying the most tickets. So it helps you decide how to divide your marketing campaign during that theatrical release. They also give you campaign tags. So you can put these campaign tags on social media marketing ads, and then it'll show you the conversion rate on those ads. So it's really useful.
Ooh, we can use data to reach our goals. All right, so we're going to talk some case studies about some filmmakers we worked with. Thunder Road, like we mentioned, they are part of year 2 of our fellowship, and we wanted to say cool ways that they use technology to grow their audience. So Thunder Road premiered at South by. It actually won the Grand Jury Prize that year. The short won the Grand Jury at Sundance.
And it won in Deauville, too.
Yeah, it won Deauville. That's so what they did is they didn't have a publicist either. And they're playing South by, and they're like, well, fuck, we want a variety review. Let's do it. So they did an ad and targeted the 1 mile radius around the Variety building. And lo and behold, Variety covered them. I mean, Jim Cummings, I'm not going to like credit the ad for like 100% of this review, but I mean, it creates buzz. Everyone's on Facebook, everyone's looking at their phone, and it could have reinforced the idea that they really should cover this film because it is buzzworthy and something people are talking about.
And also, every day we talk to Jim Cummings, it's something new like this, and we're like, I mean, all right, Jim, what else did you do today? It's crazy.
Insane. So Jim has a very specific point of view about who the audience is for his film. And so we call that understanding the neuroscience of his film. He believes that people who love Pixar movies in the backyard Pixar, this is his phrase, backyard Pixar movies. God, I hope he's not watching this or doesn't ever watch this. Would love Thunder Road. It's something to do with how Pixar is, heartwarming and takes you on a journey, and it's for kids, but it's really for adults. I mean, there's like this very complicated emotional reason why he feels that his audience is the same as Pixar lovers. And so that's how he chose his ad targeting on Facebook, is he looked at people who loved Pixar movies. Very interesting. So you don't have to think of like male 18 to 35. You can think of who really loves Benicio del Toro or who really loves Pixar movies or whatever it is.
Yeah, and when we're talking about this audience building, it has a lot to do with building those concentric circles. So you start with like your target audience, who you think is like 100%, they're going to watch this no matter what. And then going out from there, you think about the different type of offshoot niche targets that you could have. So you're just building these concentric circles out to create this wider audience swath.
And just I think we're nearing the end of the presentation, so I'll speed through this one. And also when he had theatrical, it was at the South by screenings, I think, actually. He targeted people who were geographically near the screening locations for his festival screenings so that he would drive more people to buy tickets during his festival run. So, fantastic. He's great. We love him. More screen grabs from Thunder Road. First Girl I Loved was our beta film for this fellowship. Has anyone heard of First Girl I Loved? It's really, I see a hand. It's really good. It's a really good movie. I actually quite love it. So they decided how they want to build their audience was online. Their audience is a high school romance between 2 lesbians. One of them is closeted, and they felt like their audience was very young. And so they thought, well, first we're going to create a foundation for our audience by doing a Facebook like campaign. So they created a Facebook ad that's sole conversion, like sole existence for sole reason for existence, was to drive likes to their Facebook page. And they went from like 800 likes to 40,000 Facebook likes. And then once they had aggregated that audience, that's when they started promoting content to the audience, like the trailer, like the poster. They essentially used that audience as their base, as their foundation. They also ran a sweepstakes through, I think it was mainly social media awareness. Yeah, it was. And it was, who was the first person you loved? Submit video content to us. They had a fancy investor on board who like flew the winner to LA, gave them a good time. You don't need to do that. You can do, here are 2 tickets to our premiere, or here's a t-shirt, or here's, me serenading you via Google Hangouts.
It doesn't take much.
Yeah.
You just want people to feel like they're heard and acknowledged for watching your work.
And something we didn't talk about a lot today, but we highly encourage, is partnerships with nonprofits. So they teamed up with the It Gets Better campaign, which again, I mean, we should have, I don't know what's popular in Canada. I know. But have you heard of It Gets Better? Is this just like, of course you have. Okay, cool. I don't know. It could be like much more classy, like It Gets Supremely Better in Canada, because it's horrible in the US right now. Anyway, so they teamed up with a nonprofit who then helped market the campaign, do a marketing campaign for the film and promoting to their audiences as well. So it doesn't have to be just you and your network. You can team up with like-minded organizations as well. Screen grabs, cool screen grabs.
Yeah, that shows their full Facebook spend. That's not what they spent on just one campaign. That was total.
The whole release of the film.
And then that's like the yellow graph, or the orange graph, that's the different phases of their campaign and the number of impressions they had at each campaign.
Do you want to do Unrest?
Sure. So Unrest was our first official fellowship documentary. Jen Brea is a force. She is the subject, director, producer, editor, everything of this film. She poured everything she had into this. By the time we started working with them, they already had 14,000 followers on Facebook, which is a lot. So basically what they did, what was really important for them was they said, okay, we already have the ME community on board. This is
chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah, sorry, that's the main topic of this film. Jen has ME, and it's basically living that life. What is that like? And so she had built this community out of people, who were going through what she was going through. So for them, they wanted to pull in fresh blood. They wanted a new audience. They wanted people to understand what this was about. They wanted people to know about this illness, and that it was a real thing, and that there were millions of people dealing with this. And so what they did was they created dark posts, which dark posts, what they do is they hide that post from the people who follow your page. So it specifically hides it from them so it can get to more people that haven't had any exposure to your social media channels before. And that was a great way for them to boost engagement on their channel, gain followers. Another thing, they realized through their social medias, they had a big following in the UK. So that dictated where they had a theatrical campaign. They did the US and the UK, and their UK release did better than their US release. So again, just looking at where your base is through the digital space.
I just realized we are going to have to speed through the rest of these slides.
We're good. We got it. We can leave 5 minutes for questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Transparency Project, that's something that we work on in our department. I'll give you a really brief background. It started as trying to build a predictive modeling tool by getting information from distributors and sales agents. And oh my gosh, imagine that. They don't want to give that information up. They don't want to tell us about projections and how films are doing in the marketplace. So we've turned it on its head. Excuse me. We've turned it on its head, and we're just going to release all of the information on the films that we're working with, free, clear, transparent to you all. So in these case studies, we're breaking down their budget, their P&A spends, what they made on all the different revenue streams, what worked, what didn't work, the takeaways, the struggle and the tears throughout, everything that goes into distributing and marketing these films. We're giving you access to this information, and we'll continue to do that. So please go to our website. If you go to sundance.org/case studies/creative distribution, or you can just find creative distribution on sundance.org. We link to them there. They're open to you all. It's about
They're like 30 pages each, FYI. They're amazing.
Yeah, like I said, I felt like I was writing a thesis, but it's an incredible experience to go through, to be able to provide this information. We're really proud of them, and we'll continue to do that, which leads us to our next slide.
Okay, second year. So we're in the second year of our Creative Distribution Fellowship. These are the 3 films that we're working with. Thunder Road, we've talked about a bunch. 306 Hollywood, which is releasing its theatrical, it's doing its theatrical release in New York this weekend at the Quad. And then Devil We Know, which is a fabulous documentary that's doing an impact campaign. It's all about Teflon and non-stick and pans, and how there's horrible repercussions to using them. And I threw out all my pans when I saw it. So what we want to do, this is like the most exciting part of the whole presentation, is what's going to happen year 3. It's a North American fellowship. It's open to North American filmmakers. We've only worked with U.S. filmmakers so far. So we got really excited when we got invited here. First of all, I've always wanted to go to Vancouver. But other than that, we were like, finally, we get to talk to Canadian filmmakers. This is really like an honor for us. So let's just talk really quickly about eligibility if you have interest in this fellowship. It needs to be a completed feature-length film. It could be documentary or fiction. It needs to have a festival premiere at a festival.
Sorry, what we mean by feature length is 70 minutes or longer.
Yeah, we're pretty flexible with that.
We're flexible, but just to throw that out.
It needs to have a festival premiere at a festival that's been around for at least 5 years. Doesn't have to be Sundance supported. It could be any festival. And honestly, if you don't have a festival premiere yet, just like I don't have a festival premiere for my film yet, email me, tell me a little bit about your film, and maybe we do this thing where we put it on ice, where you submit, you do all the work, and then we wait to hear back from each other for what your premiere is going to be. You need North American digital rights for your film, free and clear. So you can't do an all rights distribution deal, because the whole point is that we need you to share your information with us so that we can publish it. You get a grant for $33,000 US, and that is your distribution and marketing budget. You can supplement that budget with any additional funds, but, it's 5 minutes, okay. But that is the base for your marketing budget. And we found that actually $30,000 is a really good digital marketing budget for a feature-length film. So that's why that number was picked, really. We're picking 3 films this year. Applications are open. That is the link. And 3 people look at that up. I look at it every day. There's about 7 applications in there right now. We're looking for 1 film that has like a late spring or early summer release, and then 2 fall 2019, 2018. What is the year? What year is this? A 2019 through 19 release. But it's a conversation. So as you know, we have an open door policy, but really, and it's a free application. We don't get anything if you apply, and it's really good homework, I think, for anyone.
And also, just to be clear, we're not the distributors. You're the distributor. We don't keep any of the money. We're not in it for the money. We're a nonprofit. What we care about is providing access to information, and this gives us the ability to do that. One other thing, we're totally open to micro budget content.
Please, I am biased. Where's micro? Please, I want you to be micro budget.
So I think maybe we have time for like 2 questions or so. But let's open it up.
Here's a summary for you to look at while we answer questions.
Yes.
No one cares.
Oh, great.
Thank you. This is so interesting. I just want to know a little more about what you mean by sentiment mapping. How do you actually map that? Are there keywords that are being tracked, or, how does one actually do the analytics on that from a data perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm not a data scientist, so I can't get into like the very technical know-how of that. It's something that you can't really get too granular on the out-of-the-box analytics that you would have access to. So Facebook, Instagram, those dashboards that you can look at, they'll give you emotional assessment based on the reactions that people have to that post, right? So are they sad? Are they happy? Are they mad? Are they angry? But in terms of sentiment mapping, what they're doing is they're analyzing most of the time on text. So they're analyzing on what is actually written in the post, and then they're able to do sentiment mapping from there. So it's a much more nuanced, detailed, like almost those emotional assessments on steroids, essentially. Yeah. Yes.
Hi.
Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah.
Oh, I was about
Twitter.
to say you both have one more follower, Twitter follower,
Thank
which
you.
is me. That was an incredible presentation. Thank you so much. My question is about story fit. So you were talking about character breakdowns. So are you saying that the AI will actually analyze your script and then write the character breakdown?
They won't. You would need to actually write the character breakdown, but what it's going to give you is it's going to say this character has X percentage of vulnerability, or it'll give you like I am so sorry, you guys, coughing fit. It'll give you the very specific percentages of the different emotional tonality that each character has. So you can say like this person is like closed off because of
Overbearing.
X, or yeah, exactly.
I wanted to say that.
Yeah, but you would have to write it yourself, but it would just help you, perform that assessment.
No. We live in Los Angeles. Sundance has 3 offices, one in New York with like 10 people, one in LA with like 100 people, and one in
Utah.
Utah for like
Park City.
70 people,
80.
80 people. So we're in the California one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But come to, I don't like going to Sundance,
with
but
the
come.
With the fellowship, where would that be taking place, or would it be taking place in one of those locations?
It's at your home. So we would just have phone calls with you. And that's actually one of the requirements of the fellowship is weekly phone calls with us where you report to us. And that's one of the main reasons why we're focused on North American filmmakers is the time zone.
Yeah. I mean, we really do hope to open it up internationally at some point. It's just being a 3-person department, bandwidth-wise, it's really hard for us to schedule those calls right now. So. Cool. Oh, one other one right here. Yeah.
Hello, thank you. I'm in the throes of like developing and trying to find financing for my first feature. So a lot of this stuff is going to come in very handy when that's done. But could you speak to how it does feel like the Wild West, and especially it being my first time, I'm like trying to be aware of distribution and what are the deals I'm making going to mean, and if I have investors, like how can I be mindful of these things now as opposed to after the fact?
First thing is gather your own audience before you are reliant on them to do that for you. Second thing is this is one of the unfun things I learned about being a feature filmmaker. You don't really know your value until you figure out what festival wants you. Unless you're like a horror film, and then you just succeed, and you guys are awesome, and I'm jealous of you.
Make horror films.
So once you get into your festival and you have those distributors or sales agents approach you, contact us. We're happy to talk with you about it. We're not lawyers. We can't disseminate contracts, but we can essentially go through the slate of those distributors, see if we know any filmmakers who've worked with them, and connect you with them, because that's actually your best defense against a shitty distributor.
And also, we've been recommending building a contingency into your budget for marketing and distribution. So maybe you're not going to self-release because self-distribution isn't for everybody. We're totally aware of that. It's a lot of hard work. A lot goes into it. But if you can build in that contingency early on, it at least gives you that money to fall back on if you do end up self-releasing. If you do end up getting to that point where, and we would love filmmakers to not look at this as a secondary option and look at it as an awesome first option. But if you get to that point and you're getting those offers and you're like, these are just crap, this is not something that I was expecting, then you at least have that money to fall back on. But if you don't have it, then you're going to have to go find it elsewhere.
Yeah, know the value of your film, and don't accept any lowball offers. And if you feel like the offers are not meeting what the value is, that's an opportunity to prove them wrong.
Yeah, don't let anybody push you into an offer you're not comfortable with.
That's a slightly negative but positive note to end on. Thank you to HiFi for letting
thank
us
you guys
be here
so
in
much.
VIFF, and thank you.
Yeah, you guys were awesome. And again, creative distribution at sundance.org is our email address, and it is coming to humans, so reach out.